Welcome to Executive Leaders Radio, your spot in the corner office, the radio show where executives share their secrets to success. Executive Leaders Radio.
You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen, with my co-host, Brian Campbell, ECBM. We have a great lineup of guests for you on our show today, including Stephen Tang, President and CEO of OraSure Technologies, Kevin Crichton, President and CEO, EMM Loans, Tony Iannelli, President and CEO, Greater Lehigh Valley Chamber of Commerce, and Blake Kraft, CEO of Kraft Group. Let's get to know our first guest, Stephen Tang, President and CEO of OraSure Technologies. Stephen, what is OraSure Technologies? What are you guys doing?
Great to be here, Herb. OraSure Technologies is a 22-year-old public NASDAQ company. We are a medical diagnostic company specializing in infectious disease detection, drugs of abuse testing, as well as enabling researchers and clinicians to study the genome and the microbiome. You could say we're a pandemic company. We have products that serve testing for HIV, hepatitis C, and now COVID-19 with our IntelliSwab product.
How many brothers and sisters do you have? Where are you in the pecking order, and where are you from originally?
I'm the middle of three children. I have an older sister, younger brother, born in Madison, Wisconsin, then moved when I was very young to Wilmington, Delaware, which is where I grew up, and then did a short stint in Beaumont, Texas, when I was 7 or 8 years old.
Mm-hmm. What do you remember about growing up in Texas when you were a kid back then?
Boy, it was hot. If somebody that's born in Wisconsin and lived in Wilmington going to Texas, it was hot. Mm-hmm. But we were also the only Asian family at the school, mm-hmm. and it was a very different culture, very strict mm-hmm. culture. Yes, mm-hmm. ma'am. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Corporal punishment was available. Mm-hmm. So it was a different environment for sure.
How do you think the variety, your ability to fit in, understand people, understand how to handle yourself, get your work done, how do you think that prepared you for your role as this president and CEO of this public company known as OraSure Technologies?
That's a big question. All of us want to belong. And all of us want to stand out. And I think what it taught me in that environment is when our people are looking at you just because you look different, there's no value in that. You got to make it happen by what you're doing. Mm-hmm. So, and that's I think that's a leadership lesson we learn very on as sure. people of color.
What? Tell me a little bit about 8 to 14. What other kinds of stuff were you up to?
Wow. Well, I studied music. I played piano. I had a paper route, later worked in retail stores, but my real passion was jazz music and baseball, and mm-hmm. Learned to play baseball when I was 8 or 9 years old.
Brian, why don't you give me a hand?
Sure. Hey, Stephen. Baseball, what position did you play?
I was a catcher, Brian.
And what did you like about playing catcher?
Well, it grew on me. I mean, I was put at catcher originally because I was the fat kid, which is where, coaches usually put the fat kid. But then I realized that I could see all the other players. I was the only person on the field could see all the other players. And, I figured out that it was a pretty key role in managing pitchers and keeping people alert, setting the defense, all those kind of things. So it was kind of a leadership lesson.
Right. And so, at that early age playing catcher, you became a captain of your team. So what did being that captain of your team help with what you do now?
Well, I think the first thing it does is make sure that you have good visibility on all your teammates. Right. And, make sure that they have what they need to do their jobs, make sure that they're enthusiastic and motivated. All those things come into play.
Mm-hmm. And I understand also that you were involved when we were talking in the green room, that you were in the band and the marching band. What was your role in the band and the marching band?
Well, band and marching band, I played tuba.
Mm-hmm.
All the cool kids play tuba, right, Herb?
Uh-huh.
Right.
So you have this ability on one hand, sports, and to be the catcher, which means you were like basically controlling the plays. And then on the other hand, you're like this geek with the tuba and the marching band. You're able to juggle yourself in a bunch of different worlds. What's your ability to understand all these different worlds and all these different people have to do with your role as being the CEO of this public company?
Well, I hope it means that I value every part in the band as well as every part on the field. We all have a job to do. At any given time, certain instruments or certain players will shine, and other times we just have to do the hard work to get the job done. So I think there's a tremendous amount of humility involved with that as well.
How young were you when you started making money, and whose idea was it, by the way?
Well, I had a paper route when I was probably 11 or 12 years old. I think it was my father's way of telling me, you need to figure out how to work for a living. I mean, I was a smart kid, but that and 50 cents, as they say, would at that time buy you a cup of coffee. So, I learned, the discipline of getting up early, getting people's paper in a clean spot on their driveway or their porch. And then the worst part of the job was collecting money. But of course, if you didn't collect the money, you didn't get paid. So there's a big lesson on that as business.
Well. You mentioned also that when we were talking in the green room that when you were a kid, like all the other boys, you wanted a girlfriend, but there were some issues with a girlfriend, and the state of Virginia helped lay the groundwork. What was that all about?
Well, I grew up in the 60s, and I was, not only in Texas, but in Wilmington. We were, one of the few kids of color at the school I went to. And, I had my eye on girls, but what I didn't know was until 1967 in that Loving versus the state of Virginia suit, it was illegal for, people of different races to marry. So, that just, when I look back on it and the effect that probably had on my prospects of finding a girlfriend, it was probably pretty profound.
Yeah, I bet. Where are mom and dad from?
My parents are both immigrants from China who found their way separately here and met here.
And what were your parents doing in Wisconsin?
So my father was a graduate student, got his PhD in chemical engineering there. My mother was fairly nearby at Rockford College. She graduated, became a medical technologist, and so they were there at school, and then they were there at work, and then my father got a job at DuPont in Wilmington, Delaware.
I see. That's why you moved. So what fascinates, one of the things we talk about is whenever we meet the CEO of a public company who has many, many, many different hats they have to wear. They have to deal with investor relations, with the public, with the funds. They have to deal with the operations of the business. There's 1,001 different things. I'm trying to figure out how your mom and dad laid the groundwork for you handling all these diverse interests in your role as CEO of a public company known as OraSure Technologies.
Well, I think my parents had tremendously high expectations for us all, right? And it's the feeling I had growing up was, that you're destined for greatness, but you're totally unworthy. And so that was sort of motivation to always do better and get it right, do things in the right way. And hopefully, I think that kind of transcends the work ethic. And the smart thinking. You've got to be able to deal with people where they are and convince them where they are. None of it is by accident. So I think those relationships with investors and the board and so forth, those are very deliberate.
So even though it sounds like you're in the life science healthcare industry, it sounds like you're really a master understander of people and how to play the catcher, how to keep the field, keep your eye on the field and keep things moving forward, because you've got investors that have invested money. You want to make sure they get a return on investment. You've got to provide career opportunities for the team, the employees. You've got a lot of different stakeholders that you're concerned about all the time playing that catcher, it sounds like. And mom and dad set some pretty high expectations for you. It sounds like you're constantly trying to fulfill those expectations. Am I picking things up correctly?
You are. I think the learning for me is, you exist in a system, and you got to figure out how that system works. You got to figure out what role your company plays in it, and what role you play as a leader, and all those things come together, I think, in a better understanding of the world and where we fit in.
Wow. Yeah. The website address for this company known as OraSure Technologies. What's the website for OraSure Technologies?
www.orasure.com.
Let me have that one more time.
www.orasure.com.
How do you spell OraSure?
ORASURE.
OraSure.com. We've been speaking with Stephen Tang, President and CEO of OraSure Technologies here on Executive Leaders Radio. Don't forget to visit our website. It's executiveleadersradio.com. To learn more about our executive leaders, we'll be back in a moment. Stick around. We'll be right back.
You now can recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, executiveleadersradio.com. Yes, you can recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, executiveleadersradio.com. Simply visit executiveleadersradio.com, securely enter their info, and we'll reach out to spotlight your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, executiveleadersradio.com. Don't wait. This radio and online social media and search engine exposure is quite valuable to your advisors. Yes, this radio and online social media exposure is free and quite valuable to your business advisors who deserve to be recognized. Visit executiveleadersradio.com now to nominate your deserving business advisors.
Back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen, with my co-host, Brian Campbell, ECBM, and we'd like to introduce Kevin Crichton, who's the president and COO of EMM Loans. And Kevin, what is EMM Loans? What are you guys doing?
EMM Loans is a residential mortgage lender. We are licensed in 38 states around the country. We have a three-prong channel. We do direct marketing to consumer. We do what we call distributed retail, or brick and mortar branches in different parts of the country. And then we also work with brokers and correspondents to acquire loans that they're originating.
Can you give us a sense of some interesting statistics like last year that you did?
Our revenues tripled to about $130 million in revenues. We produced a little over around $3 billion in mortgages. The best year prior to that was about $2 billion. This is a company that started 10 years ago when I got here, was doing $300 million a year in production, and revenues were probably $10 million. So the growth in the last 10 years has been substantial.
Yeah, pretty substantial. Where you from originally? How many brothers and sisters? Where are you in the pecking order, and so on? Born
in Brooklyn, raised between Brooklyn and Staten Island at a young age. Somewhere around 6, 7 years old, I moved to New Jersey with my family. I have one sister. I'm the oldest. She's 2 years younger. My father was a Brooklyn boy himself, Greenpoint, Brooklyn. So was my mother, Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. But they had this dream to have a home in the suburbs, and that's what they did. They moved us up to Jersey, and we spent every weekend going back and forth to my relatives and having dinners and activities with my family. So we never really left the family. We just lived in New Jersey.
So you went to suburbia, and give me an idea. 8 to 14 years old. What kind of stuff were you doing?
Sports and working and school, those three things. My father grew up one of 7, and, family didn't have much. So his work ethic was impeccable, as mine was going to be in his estimates. Whether it been shoveling driveways in the winter, whether it been delivering a paper, newspapers, whether it been babysitting or cutting someone's lawn from 8 to kind of 13, 14, those are the type of things you did. I couldn't drive anywhere, obviously, but at the age of 14, then I got pushed into going to New York City, work as a porter with the union that my father hooked me up with to help me get through school, to be honest with you, for the money.
So your father got you a job as a porter so that you could make money to go to school? What are you talking about?
My parents didn't make a lot of money back then. I was proud. I think I was the first or second person in my family to go to college. So they didn't have that kind of money, nor did they even think about it when they were younger. So, to go to school and the amount of money it cost then and even now, I had to make some money and put some money away for that anticipated college.
So what do you think? How do you think that affected you? The fact that you had to go pay for your own college?
Well, made me appreciate the value of a dollar, no doubt, because I wasn't just getting it from someone else.
What do you think that's done? What do you think that did to help to propel the growth of this business that you're running?
Appreciation of a dollar or the money that we're all here to make money. But I think understanding how you get there and the amount of work that it takes to really get there and secure it. I have a favorite saying in this business: it's not what you make, it's what you keep. So it's important to do it the right way and do it in a way where it's not going to boomerang back to you. In our business, we have issues where we sell loans to large entities like Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. And if you do it wrong, it comes back to you and they can make you buy the loan back. And hence what you think you made is no longer what you made, it's what you're losing.
So really
you have to do things the correct way.
Customers the right way. Yeah, and run the operation the right way.
Customers, compliance, credit and all that stuff.
Hey, Kevin, when you were younger, what sports did you like to play?
When I was younger, it was always football, baseball, basketball, wrestling, my youth. That was, from the age of, I guess 5 when I first put a football helmet on to, when I got into high school. High school was something more like 2 or 3 sports and then ultimately just 2 sports.
Got it. And what interested you about wrestling, and did you stick with it?
Wrestling was a macho sport, and a lot of my friends played it, but to me, it became an individual sport, and it wasn't something I was really interested in. Some people said, was it because you're not any good at it? Maybe, but at the same time, I wanted to spend more of my time around some of the team-oriented type sports, and wrestling just didn't appeal to me.
Got it. And what kind of roles do you have on the other sports you played, such as like baseball, basketball, football?
Basketball, while it wasn't my best sport, it was a sport I enjoyed. I played, in the middle there. If you go, I'm aging myself, but a typical Wes Unseld type of player where, mixing up into the middle, boxing people out and trying to make room for other players to score. I wasn't the scorer. I was the support player. Baseball was a catcher. So again, in every play and there to support the field and kind of captain the field, if you will. And then football was center and middle linebacker. So again, in the middle of everything, call me a glutton for punishment. I don't know, but it was the positions I enjoyed the most. Right.
So it looks like you had the kind of tougher roles, like these, you could call them blue collar roles as well. And they're similar to the jobs you had when you were growing up. So kind of bringing that all together, what did these, whether these roles in the teams or the jobs you had at a younger age, how'd that help prepare you for what you do now?
Well, you have to be smart and you have to learn, and you have to be a sponge, but more importantly, you have to be willing to not to dish out pain, but accept pain in some aspects. I don't mean physical pain. I mean, sometimes emotional pain, just work. There's things that if you're soft, I don't think you can make it real well in business. So you have to be able to prepare to carry your weight, the world on your shoulders at times, even if it's painful for your lower back. That's the analogy I make, but those positions in football and baseball and basketball, kind of taught me to be tough, if you will.
Mm-hmm. And what subjects did you have the most interest in school growing up?
Funny. Initially, I thought I wanted to be a dentist until I took chemistry, and I bailed out of that real quick. But my interest I was always good in math. I was always good in math. I was good with numbers. So math and bookkeeping in high school was kind of the 2 favorite subjects of mine, which ultimately led me into accounting and finance as I got into college.
Mm-hmm. And what about those 2 subjects that enticed you so much that you stuck with them over time?
Well, again, when you're good at something, it's more pleasurable. That's number 1. Number 2, I knew I can learn any type of industry or business if I learned it from the ground up. And accounting and finance is the core of any business. Let's be honest. That's why we're here. It's why we run businesses. Yep. You want to give back to your communities and so on and so forth. I agree. But, you got to understand the basic, what it is, blocking and tackling.
What's really important to you? I hear you've really grown this business. You've had financial success. The team's grown. You're well respected. What's really important to you, though?
Family, for sure, in every aspect, and not just your immediate family, but extended family, family at work. People I care about, the people at work. Sometimes, be in this position, you get busy, and you got to remember to take the time to ask questions and see how they're doing personally, because I think it's important, A, how you can run the business, and B, just to show people you care. So family, but, I grew up where family was important, but there was a time period in my career where, I worked eight days a week, and I didn't get home to see my family a lot, but I was doing it for my family. So today I have the luxury of, being more successful, having some money in the bank, if you will, and I can spend more time with my family, which is amazingly rewarding for me. So.
Also, it sounded to me like you've had family in your blood since you were a kid, because even though you may have moved from New York to New Jersey, you kept on going back to New York to be with the family, even though your father had done a bit better than his siblings. So you really are a family kind of guy. Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, it was instilled in me at a young age. Even when we left New York, I literally every weekend went home to be with either the Italian side of my family, which we sat around a big table and had, literally pasta and meatballs. And in the summers, I spent the summers while I was working in New York, staying at a bungalow with the Scottish Irish side of my family. So I mixed it up, and it was always around extended family for right through probably to college.
What was your role amongst your cousins? How many cousins do you have, and what's your role? What was your role amongst them?
Cousins, there's 20 or 20 plus family. If you split both sides of the family, on my one side of the family, my mother's side, I was the oldest. I was the first grandchild.
So how'd you handle that with your cousins?
Just, I was the leader. I was the guy that they looked up to, and I kind of, I coordinated things when we went to dinner to make sure nobody was getting out of hand. Or
excuse me, how young were you when you were doing this?
Probably from the get-go. I don't know, as far back as I can remember.
So you're a natural leader. Who you are in the family is many times expressed in your business. Is there a similarity between you organizing all the kids so that they would get food and so on and so forth, and you're running this business as the COO?
I think so. I'd like to think so. I think you have to work at it. While you may have it instilled in you, it's natural. Gotcha. You're not a good leader unless you really work at it and educate yourself. And
what's the website address of this organization known as EMM Loans?
It's simply emmloans.com.
We've been speaking with Kevin Crichton, President and COO of EMM Loans, here on Executive Leaders Radio. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen, with my co-host, Brian Campbell, Dave Mady, and Tom Trey from ECBM. I'd like to introduce Tony Iannelli. Tony's the president and CEO of the Greater Lehigh Valley Chamber of Commerce. Tony, what is the Greater Lehigh Valley Chamber of Commerce? What are you guys doing?
Well, it's a large regional chamber. It started out as individual chambers here in the Lehigh Valley. There's not a particular dominant city, so we merged 13 chambers of commerce together and increased membership from about 700 to 5,000.
Wow, you rolled 13, 14 chambers together to equal 5,000 members. Where are you from originally? How many brothers and sisters, and where are you in the pecking order?
I'm from Allentown, 7 brothers and sisters, and I'm right smack dab in the middle.
All right, wait, maybe I'm a little crazy here. Did being in the middle of 7 brothers and sisters sort of prepare you for the role of rolling up 13 or 14 chambers in commerce and all those members?
Yeah, absolutely, because I learned 2 things. One was to be flexible and negotiate with being right in the middle. And the other was having 2 older brothers that were pretty hard on me to be tough when you need to be tough.
Gotcha. Got it loud and clear. Thomas? What are you thinking?
Well, Tony, I have a little bit of a family roots in Allentown, and I know it to be very much a midtown America, a town of neighborhoods, very parochial. How does that, growing up with that mindset, lead you to be the head of the Chamber of Commerce?
Well, I think it made me a happy kid. It was a great place to grow up and really, a lot of fun, great neighborhoods, a lot of interaction. Everyone knew everyone, that kind of town. If you knew a name, everyone knew that person. Very different today. We've evolved into the Lehigh Valley, so we brought these cities together, Allentown, Bethlehem, Easton, and beyond.
Mm-hmm. Thomas, what was your second question?
Just as a follow-up, beforehand, we spoke a little bit about your early background out in the world, and you were involved in the meat business and meat distribution business, and it even included icing down chickens. How does icing down chickens, can you connect the dots between icing chickens and who you are today?
I would say two things have taught me that hard work was key. And I had to get down. My dad was clear that you have to come down. It's our business. You have to come down and work. So it taught me about hard work. And again, I was a very diverse workforce, and it taught me to really embrace and learn other people and their cultures and really appreciate them and love them.
So this was your father's business that he engaged you to get involved with. You really learned some basic principles there, didn't you?
Yeah, he was an old school, entrepreneur, if you will, a lot of, Italian-American kind of hustle, trying to make a living. So, he taught me a lot about business and what needs to be done.
Brian?
Hey, Tony. Beforehand, you were mentioning that you played a lot of sports as a kid. Were these organized sports or were these neighborhood sports?
Well, originally I was a ton of neighborhood sports, and which is something I really enjoyed. I was kind of the neighborhood organizer of softball teams, baseball teams, football, and anything that we did.
Right, and as being the organizer, how does that connect the dots to what you do today with the chamber?
Same thing today. Maybe I have an idea. I can't wait to tell everybody and bring people on board. So it's just kind of the same thing I did as a child, really, only different.
David?
What kind of impact did your mother have on you growing up?
Well, that's a great question because we had a large family. So again, you had to work to get the attention and get the time. But I think she wanted to show me a bigger world. We had a family business, but it was very kind of blue collar. And I think she wanted to show me a little larger world and insisted on dress. My first name's Terrence. So she changed my name to, when I filled out my first savings book, to T. Anthony rather than Terrence or Tony. So she kind of had a vision, I would say, in that way.
What's that all have to do with getting you to dress correctly and using your phone? What's that have to do with you being the head of the Chamber of Commerce?
Well, ironically, today I have kind of a shtick, and it's noted for in that. So I wear bow ties, and my socks typically match my bow tie, as does my pocket square. So I've always enjoyed dress because of that. And I really that was her idea. So, yeah, I mean, it made you sort of want to be somebody other than yourself. It was almost part of the act.
So your dad was in business for himself. How'd that business go?
Well, it didn't end great. It was initially, I saw two worlds. It was a great business, and we were, by 50s and 60s standards, wealthy, which means you had a nice car and a nice house. He lost his business, though, when I was a senior in high school. And it had a huge impact. I saw how difficult it can be. We actually had to leave our home. The bank took over the house, and all the siblings went different places for the older ones. That's for sure.
So you were in high school when this happened?
Yes. Yeah.
Tell me more about how this affected you.
Oh, it was hard to watch, because I didn't feel like I was too young maybe to have a huge impact or fix it, but I was certainly old enough to be impacted by it. But I can tell you this, it made me today to this day, I'm tenacious about making sure that even with the chamber, we have more than what the reserves we should have. So I'm always worried about that disaster that might be around the corner. It's not a great approach, but it's pretty good to keep me out of trouble.
Boy, so your heart's really in this gig. I mean, the Chamber of Commerce, your job is to help support business and help employment. You're really built for this job, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm really blessed. It was the one job, I think. I always say if I got a job at a large corporation, they'd probably get rid of me in about a month. But this job is about people, bringing people together, promoting business, and it's what I love to do. I've loved it's 23 years. I've loved every minute of it.
Wow. There was also something you mentioned earlier when we were talking about you were involved with some sports and you quit and you got some nightmares. Tell us a little bit about those nightmares.
Yeah, again, the biggest lessons I've learned have been the toughest thing I've been through. But I was on the high school football team. And again, in those days, that was a big, big deal. We had a beautiful stadium. We put 10,000 people in it. And my senior year, I quit after the third game. That impacted me. I had nightmares for to this day where I'll be in the locker room. I can't find my uniform. I'm on the way there. My car won't start. So obviously it had a huge impact and made me realize I'm not, unless I need to, I'm not quitting at anything if I can help it.
Wow. And tell me about this not quitting. What's that have to do with your getting involved with building this Lehigh Valley Chamber of Commerce, rolling up 13 or 14 other chambers? Give me that piece.
Well, quickly, we just decided in this Lehigh Valley that we were going to be more regional, that we weren't going to be individual cities or municipalities. So it was a concept that I believed in and just embraced, and I wasn't going to quit until we got there. Now, I use the word I a lot, but I'm a sort of a we person. There were a lot of people that helped me, a lot of amazing people in every community. You know, when people give up their local chamber of commerce, you know, in Bethlehem or Easton or wherever, you better deliver, and they better have faith in you. So it wasn't easy.
So it's like pulling all the kids together in terms of the neighborhood baseball and not quitting. And that really is who you are, isn't it? You're all about people.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I don't want to overstate it, but people being happy in the end, you know, reaching the old where, you know, both parties are happy, you know, so the old win-win concept.
The old win-wins concept. Brian, didn't you have a question about advice or something?
Yeah, Tony, it was great hearing about your story here today. Just one piece of advice you'd give to people.
I just think, again, you know, there's maybe two real quickly. One is to find something you really enjoy doing and then just run with it as much as you can. And secondly, I had a tendency to have a low ceiling where I thought I could be in life, and to be open to maybe reaching a little bit higher than maybe don't forget in that era I brought up when I was brought up, and people had a tendency to put ceilings on you. And I'd say think big without being, unrealistic.
So this gig of yours it says here you're on a piece of paper that you're the president and CEO of the Greater Lehigh Valley Chamber of Commerce. I guess the benefit of your being the CEO is you get to go in at 10 or 11 and leave at 2 or 3.
Yeah, I'm obsessed. I'd always say you can reach me if you text me or call me. I will call you back in 2 minutes, or I text you right back. I live it, and even when I'm away, when someone says I went to Italy, somebody said, "Are you going to still be available?" I said, "Well, instead of getting back to you in 3 minutes, I'll get back to you in 4 minutes." So, and I always say real quick, it's not that I have a great work ethic. It's just that I'm so nosy. I can't resist who's.
I don't know. I think you like being on top of stuff. That goes back to that locker room and the nightmares and not quitting and, really elevating yourself and making sure everybody's winning and winning. Boy, oh boy, for you to roll up those chambers of commerce, keep all those members happy, you have to be interested in really building a big family. Well, what's the website address for this organization known as the Greater Lehigh Valley Chamber of Commerce?
It's LehighValleyChamber.org.
Let me have that one more time. LehighValleyChamber.org. We've been speaking with Tony Iannelli, President and CEO of the Greater Lehigh Valley Chamber of Commerce. Don't forget to visit our website. It's executiveleadersradio.com. That's executiveleadersradio.com to learn more about our executive leaders. Stick around. We'll be back in a moment right after this quick break.
Recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, Executive Leaders Radio. Yes, you can recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, executiveleadersradio.com. Simply visit executiveleadersradio.com, securely enter their info, and we'll reach out to spotlight your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, executiveleadersradio.com. Don't wait. This radio and online social media and search engine exposure is quite valuable. Yes, this radio and online social media and search engine exposure is quite valuable to your business advisors who deserve to be recognized. Visit executiveleadersradio.com now to nominate your deserving business advisors for free exposure.
We're back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen, with my co-host, Brian Campbell, Dave Mady, and Tom Trey from ECBM. I'd like to introduce Blake Kraft, who's the CEO of Kraft Group. Blake, what is a Kraft Group? What are you guys doing?
We are a transportation company, largely a school bus company, but we also provide motor coach, public transit, and paratransit services.
How large or how small is the organization?
We're a fairly large business in our industry. We're, in fact, one of the largest family-owned businesses in our industry, in the school bus, specifically in the school bus industry. To put that in context, we operate in 4 states, employ about 3,200 employees, and operate about 2,500 vehicles on a daily basis.
Wow. Where are you from originally? How many brothers and sisters, and where are you in the pecking order?
I grew up in Downingtown, Pennsylvania, still live in the area, and I'm the youngest of 3 brothers.
And Thomas?
The transportation industry is just well known for being a generational business, passed on from generation to generation. And it appears that's the case with your organization. If so, when you were in that 8 to 14 range, did you already know that this is where you were going to be? Were you preordained to be here, or were you sitting around thinking about being a policeman or a fireman? And if you were preordained, you were already in a training mode at that point in time?
So I like to think that I had a choice in my destiny, but I did grow up working in the business. I worked probably starting at the age of 12 or 13 after school, and in the summers working in and around the business.
And when you started working in the business, what were you doing?
My first job was cutting the grass. As you can imagine, school buses need large parking lots, and in the summertime, that's fields that need cut.
So you learned that you started from the ground up, even though you're the CEO. Brian?
Hey, Blake. So when you were 8 to 14, how would you describe your personality as best you can recall?
I was pretty quiet and observant. I think really when I look back on it, I was largely watching my brothers and dad and others around me and trying to learn from them.
That's interesting. So that quietness, the constant observing, how does that connect the dots to what you do today as CEO?
I think, as any leader of a business will tell you, that a large part of our job is listening to people and learning what's important to them and trying to help them do their job better. So that learning or listening and observing, I think, has helped help guide people.
David?
What kind of influence did your mother and father have on you, 8 to 14?
Oh, they had a very strong influence on me, both in different ways.
Well, tell us.
Can you elaborate?
So my mother, she pretty much, she raised me as far as all the activities, school and, sports and things like that. My dad was.
Didn't you mention they were divorced when you were about 7?
That's correct. Yes.
Yep. So your mom's the one who raised you. Go ahead. I'm listening.
But we were talking before the show, my parents had a very unique relationship. My dad was still very involved. He would often come for dinner, even after the divorce. The business was at a point that he oftentimes had to leave dinner and go back to work.
So the fact that mom and dad were divorced, but that came to dinner, what'd you learn from that relationship that has anything to do with your being able to grow this organization called the Kraft Group?
Well, I think patience was one of the things I learned. I think also that not everything is black and white, that there's a lot of gray, that rules and boundaries that some thought were ridiculous to cross at the time, they were, they made it work.
So how's that helping you as a CEO of this organization, which is 3,200 employees?
Well, I think one of the things that we try to bring to not just me, but my whole management team, we try to bring to our employees is we try to give them the tools and the resources to make decisions on their own, and try not to define every possible rule or every scenario they might encounter.
So you guys are open to various ways of solving problems. It doesn't have to be black or white. Somebody else may have a better way of doing it, it sounds like.
Well, I think a school bus driver or any driver makes thousands of decisions every minute as far as operating the vehicle safely. So we don't want to think for them. We want to teach them how to make those decisions and give them the tools to make the right decisions.
Let me ask you a question. Do you have a lot of turnover in your organization? Because it seems to me there's this family thing going on, and you're pretty sensitive to observing, to brothers, to keeping the family together. I mean, it seems I'm willing to bet you people are pretty happy working for the Craft Group. Am I right or wrong about that?
Well, we have turnover, but we have our turnover compared to the rest of the industry is lower, much lower in some cases.
Why is that?
Why is our turnover low?
Yeah.
We like to think it's because we focus on our employees. Mm-hmm. We've always thought that we should treat them the same as we treat our customers.
Are you the smartest guy on the team? I mean, you're the CEO.
No, not even close.
I mean,
I'm the biggest in the family. That's why I'm the CEO.
Yeah, but am I embarrassing you by asking that question? I didn't mean to embarrass you, but I figured, you're the CEO. You got to be the smartest one. Where am I off in my thinking?
We don't have enough time to go through the evolution, but I'm the youngest of the third generation. I have two older brothers and two older cousins in the business. And I was just in the right place at the right time. I think I had the right internal and external training for the job.
Mm-hmm. It sounds to me like you're pretty humble is what it sounds like to me. By the way, when you were a kid, what kind of sports did you play, or what was your favorite sport, better yet?
Growing up, I was a soccer player, and I swam on the swim team in the summertime and did a lot of recreational skiing.
Recreational skiing. You mentioned earlier when we were talking that skiing was your favorite sport, but you lived in Pennsylvania. But didn't you mention to me something about competitive skiing or something like that?
Yes. If I lived somewhere other than Pennsylvania, I think I would have competed as a skier and not played soccer or swim.
Yeah, you got a pretty competitive nature there. Tom, what are you thinking?
What I'm thinking is how did the competitiveness of skiing, how did that differ or prepare you for the competitiveness in your business?
That's an interesting question. I can't say that I've ever thought about it, but I think one of the things that I enjoy about skiing is being outside in the elements and reacting to all the different things that come at you as a skier, whether it be the different snow conditions, the weather conditions, potential people on the skiing.
Isn't that the same thing as being the CEO? Like you're in the middle of it all. You're trying to figure out what to do with it all.
It is an interesting comparison that I've never thought about, Herb.
What's the best part of being the CEO of Craft Group? What do you enjoy the most about it?
Well, the best part prior to this pandemic was being able to get out to all our different locations and meet with all our employees and meet with the customers. So really the people piece is my favorite part.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It sounds like you're really quite a people person. What's the website address for this organization known as the Craft Group?
It's simple, craftbus.com.
How do you spell it?
KRA, P as in Paul, F as in Frank, BUS.com.
We've been speaking with Blake Craft, CEO of the Craft Group here on Executive Leaders Radio. Don't forget to visit our website, executiveleadersradio.com, to learn more about our executive leaders. This is your host, Herb Cohen, and we've had the opportunity of speaking with Stephen Tang, President and CEO of OraSure Technologies. Kevin Crichton, President and COO of EMN Loans, Tony Ionelli, President and CEO of Greater Lehigh Valley Chamber of Commerce, and again, most recently, Blake Kraft, CEO of Kraft Group. Don't forget to visit our website, executiveleadersradio.com, to learn more about our executive leaders. That's executiveleadersradio.com to learn more about our executive leaders. Thank you for joining us today, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.